It's Erev Shabbos, it's Friday, it's soon going to be Shabbos. We've had our share of Shabbos and Yontif, Baruch Hashem. Keeps us busy these days. It's going to be Shabbos Parshas Shemini, and I was asked if we can do the Parsha summary that we usually give before laning briefly. So this week's Parsha talks about, in the first Aliyah, we have Parshas Shemini. Vayihi b'yom hashmini, and it was on the 8th day, that's the 8th day, meaning after 7 days of inauguration of the prep, when Moshe Rabbeinu was doing the service of the Mishkan, the very first version of the Beis HaMikdash, and now was the time for Aaron and the Kohanim to formally take over. And the Parsha begins, it took place on the first day of Nisan of the year 2449. And on that day, on that first day, was the first official day, the consecration of the Mizbeach. Over 40 offerings are going to be brought in just in that day alone. Each required the direct ministrations of Aaron himself, and that was how he inaugurated not only himself, but forever and ever the Kohanim, his sons and grandsons, etc., all started on that very first day. And most importantly, which we missed, it was one of the sad parts of not davening with a minyan, we missed the Birchas Kohanim. I know Ambassador David Friedman was one of the 10 Kohanim who were part of the minyan at the Kosel, the only minyan at the Kosel, this Chalamod, when they usually have that massive Birchas Kohanim. He was honored, he's a Kohen, he was honored to be one of the 10 Kohanim to give that bracha, and they had in mind to give it for everybody around the world, even those who are not in front of them. And on a certain level, that works as well. Even someone who's a Chure Beis HaKnesses, if they have in mind, and we have in mind to be a part of it, and hopefully that bracha should help us, Hashem should watch over us. Aaron gives them the blessing. Followed Moshe and Aaron, actually together, the two of them, also gave the Jewish nation the bracha of the Kapitel 90, Psalm 90 in Tehillim. That's the first and second aliyahs. In the third aliyah, the peak arrives, the climax of the inauguration. A fire comes zipping down from heaven to light the Mizbeach in miraculous way. It was a light that wasn't extinguished. And at the very same time, we have the rather horrific story of the deaths of Nadav and Avihu, two of the 4 sons of Aaron, the 2 prized sons. They took matters into their own hands, meaning well, but beyond the purview of their authority, and a divine fire struck them dead, consumed them from within, leaving them outwardly unmarked, but dead. And Moshe's words of consolation to Aaron, so brief, and he tells Aaron, B'kroi vayakadesh, I knew that Hashem was going to take from those who are closest to me, and that I didn't know who he meant. And Moshe was kind of telling Aaron, I thought that it meant me and you, Aaron. And I see now that your sons were even holier than us. That was Moshe's quick comfort to Aaron. Met famously by Aaron's Vayidom Aaron. Aaron was silent in a silence of acceptance. Something to think about as really in the parasha. What was that all about? Their cousins are asked to remove the bodies of Nadav Avihu. It was a family-only private funeral. They took them out from the courtyard of the Mishkan, and that wasn't because of a virus. It was because, at that point, they did not want to get anybody tamei, anybody impure. Everybody was partaking in celebrating the Mishkan, and it wasn't the right time for people to become impure by coming in contact with a dead body. Even their brothers, the 2 remaining sons of Aaron, Elazar and Itamar, were told that they should not overly mourn the deaths in the standard manner. And this is actually where we learn about Kriya and about not cutting one's hair when one is in mourning, and other halachos of mourning are learned from this parasha. Some of it they did do, and some of it they were told, well, don't do that. So we know that that's normally what is done. The Torah then sits down a few rules to prevent the Kohanim from endangering themselves. And all of these are discussed as being part of the cause, perhaps, of why they died, what they did wrong. Shouldn't come into the Beis HaMikdash with long hair, not with any torn garments. You have to look respectable. You're a representative of God, a representative of the nation. Both, right? You should have to look respectable. You can't come in under the influence of wine. Something for us to think about. Something that we're strongly considering after this pandemic is over, when we get back to shul, is making sure we don't daven musaf with wine or intoxicating liquids within us. Maybe no Kiddush Club. Not the most bakavadik, not the most appropriate thing for a shul in the first place, in the middle of davening, to be having Kiddush. We can wait another 15 minutes and do it after. Might be something that we should consider. Right? We should not enter the mikdash under the influence of wine. violations of any of those other things. There's a few others as well. In the fourth and fifth Aliyah, Moshe instructs Aaron and his sons to continue the service of the Mizbeach's consecration, finish it up, even though they were in their Shiva technically. They did not sit Shiva. That's one of the differences. What they did not do, what is normally done. And they were told, because they had to bear that responsibility, to go forward with that. But the two sons were warned, the two surviving sons, to be very careful not to transgress one of the things that their two brothers had done that was a little out of step, though well-intended, is don't make your own decisions, follow your rabbis, follow your leaders, don't make your own decisions on your own, know your limits. These are all things, it's amazing, all the issues that they had are things that we struggle with as a nation, as a community, and some individuals more than others always, in each one in different ways, tremendously. Moshe then comes, and they did run into a little issue. The other two brothers, they did not eat the karbanos the proper way they were told to, and this time Aaron defends their behavior, saying that they just couldn't not, observe that Shiva, so to speak, in any which way, and that was the reason why. And Moshe says he admits that he admitted to their reasoning and to Aaron's defense of them, and they all move on. In the sixth Aliyah, we switch topics to the basic laws of kashrus. What's kosher and what's not kosher. The non-kosher animals, fish, fowl, are recorded. Grasshoppers, there are kosher versions. We don't generally eat them, but there are. And we note that if you look in chapter 11, pasuk 4 through 7, it's one of the most established proofs of the divine authorship of the Torah. There's no other way that anyone could have written that if it wasn't God. How could anyone dare make a statement that these are the only animals ever going to be discovered? Right? There's been tens of thousands of species discovered since then that we were not aware of. We still continue to discover little zoology, to discover new species, but we've never discovered one that contradicts what the Torah says. These are the only ones, because who can say such a thing? The Creator. If you made it, you know what to say. You know that there are no others that you created or that will be created. The seventh Aliyah, we have the halachos of the pure and the impure, Tumah and Tahara. What purity, what an impurity, what it has to do with, is nothing to do with good or bad, but it's a process that involves the concepts of life and death, and symbolic of the emphasis that the Torah places on serving God with optimism, and that's where the impurity comes from of a dead body is one form of tumah, of impurity. Non-kosher foods are an impurity to the body in of itself. And with that, we end off the parasha with that symbolism that as long as there is life, there's opportunity to grow in our relationship with God. There's always opportunity to purify ourselves, be it by mikvah, be it by doing mitzvos, and that's where we go. That has to do with why we're commanded to keep kosher. Something to think about as you read the parasha, and as you wait, I'll share soon a short speech for Shabbos, but something to think about is Vayidom Aaron, and Aaron was silent. His two sons just died tragically, and marring is probably the highlight of his life and a highlight of history, and it was very difficult to understand why. Why would this be occurring? Why did that crisis happen? But Aaron was silent. What does that silence mean? Was he a martyr? Was he, right? Or was he silent in a silence of understanding? Have a good Shabbos. We'll see you soon.